people in America fear their government, and the government is being run by too many powerful agencies like the IRS and others. I think it's time the people take the country back through their representative government.
Hey, Mr. Politician, living on that hill, living in that life of luxury on we the people's bill. Don't have a clue how the other half lives, and that is a shame. It's time to stop the tyranny. You keep pushing through your bills. Going for revolution, going for it now. It's time to save our Constitution while we still got the guns in our hands.
Hi, I'm Renee Kimball, your host for Freedom TV. And today we have a very unusual show for you. We're not going to be having our usual guest. We're going to be talking about a lot of different things, and we're going to be showing a little bit longer of a video called Climate Chains. That's going to be done in 2 parts, and I think you'll have a very interesting second opinion of the climate debate. This is a view of the other side and some information that you probably have not heard too often before. But before that, we're going to go to our favorite segment called Sovereign Soapbox. Yes, my favorite time when I get to talk about whatever I want to because it's my show. And this week, we're going to be talking about Medicare and the billing procedures in Medicare and why, if they can't get it right now, I really don't want them handling the whole show. About 3 years ago, my mother died, and during that process, there was a lot of Medicare billing that went around. Well, one of the bills that went through Providence Healthcare, Adventist Healthcare, has never been paid to this day. This 3.5 years later, and I recently just got another bill. So if we can bring up that bill, I'll tell you a little bit about this one. What was really interesting about this bill is Medicare paid for the shunt in my mother's arm, which fed her saline solution so that she could be hydrated. It paid for the nurse. It paid for everything. It paid for the saline solution for the 2 weeks that she remained alive. The only thing it didn't pay for, which was a little bit odd, was the flushing out of the shunt, which kept her infection-free and actually made her capable of ingesting the liquid. And this is the bill for it. So $773.04. Medicare just refused to pay. So who gets to bite the bullet on this one? Well, thank goodness the medical people that I dealt with, Adventists, wrote it off when my mother died and didn't request that I pay the $773 to have the shunt flushed. So this gives you an idea of the things that will not be covered under a national health care system. So it's something to consider when you think about the government taking over the paying of all of the Medicare bills, because this one in particular could have cost my mother her life in the short time that she had left. So that's Sovereign Soapbox. And now we're going to be going to a special segment of Surviving and Thriving. This is going to be we're not going to have a roll-in this week. We're going to be talking about canning. So I have some things here to show you. And first up, I want to show you there's lots of different ways to can things. Then the basic way you choose which way you're going to be canning things is the food high acid or is it low acid? And foods come in 2 different acid groups. The fruits, for the most part, are high acid, things like apples and peaches and pears, berries, all of those guys are considered high acid. Tomatoes, even though tomato is considered a vegetable, it is actually a high acid thing. So you can actually can those things in one of these 2 canners. These are called boiling water bath canners. And this is an older one I have here. And what's really unique about this one is that it's an old one. This is from the 30s and 40s. And it's unlike the ones that you can get today. This has 8 spaces for your canning jars. So these are the 2 different racks that you can use in these. And as you can see, this one has a space for 8 jars, and this one has a space for 7 jars, 6 on the outside and 1 in the center. Now, that may not seem like a big difference, but believe me, when you're canning 50 jars of tomato sauce, that makes a big difference. You can can 1 more. So this canner is slightly bigger and takes 8 jars, whereas the ones you can get today, you can either buy them new, or I saw one today at a garage sale, perfect condition, absolutely perfect condition, for $3. And it was 7, but again, you know, for $3, my God, that's a great buy. The difference between this and the modern version of it is this one will rust out at one time or another. The other difference is with this canning tray, you can see only 1 ring around the outside. It really needs a second ring on the inside because the jars have a tendency to kind of tip when they're sitting in there. And so when you pull them out, especially the pint jars, they have a tendency to rack back and forth. Well, that's been solved in the new variety. But I just want to show you the inside of this, and you can see it's in pretty good condition, but there are a few rust spots. And on the back, you can see that it's kind of starting to rust out a bit. And eventually, this canner will go. I've actually gone through 2 of them. So this is the old-fashioned porcelain on steel. And the canners are good. They're great canners. They work really well. They heat up really well, but they do have that problem of eventually rusting out. So, voila, we have the new version. Now, this one's a little bit different. This one's made entirely out of stainless steel, and it has a stainless steel domed lid, and it's got a temperature gauge on the top of it, which really isn't too terribly useful on a boiling water bath canner, but, you know, they put it there so you can tell if it's in your zone. Different altitudes, the water will boil at different temperatures. So this is the stainless steel version, and the rack for this one, which is really kind of interesting, it too is stainless steel. And as you can see, they did solve the problem. They've got multiple rings on this one. You can see it's lots and lots and lots of rings. The jars do not tip. They sit absolutely perfectly, and they will pull out and sit nicely in the canner. It also has a facility of holding the jars. The only thing I don't like about this one is the jars. This does not sit perfectly well on top of the canner. The rack doesn't sit real well, and the other thing that you can't do is keep the rack on and put your lid on and boil your water. As you can see, it kind of, you know, so I'm still waiting for the guys to work out everything. Maybe they should just have a woman in the kitchen designing these things, and we'd have it done. But it is much better in regard to the ability to utilize the space in your canner. So you can actually get, instead of 7 pints, you can actually get 8 or 9 pints inside of this. The other added advantage, this one does turn over. This is not a recommended boiling. They're not recommending steaming, although I know a lot of people who still do steam their high acid foods and can it that way. It takes a lot less water, and it's a great deal faster. This way, turned up, you can stick, you know, probably about 5 quarts on top of there. I mean, 8 quarts on top, or you can probably get about 7 or 8 of the pint jars. So if you're into that kind of thing, it is not recommended, again, but you know, a lot of things aren't recommended but are still good. The other advantage of this one is you can see at the bottom of the canner, I'll just hold it up, it's narrower, so it actually takes less water and will heat up a lot faster. The stainless steel is a lot more durable. This will never rust out. Handle may fall off in time eventually, but I can always have that fixed. One of the neat things that I do is I take a reading of how much water I need in the canner for 4 quarts and 7 quarts. So I don't have to guess. So I know that if I have 6 1/4 inches of water, when I put 4 quarts in there, it's going to be completely submerged. So that makes it's kind of a little trick I use to keep tabs on how you can and how much water you need. It saves a lot of time and you don't have to guess so much. Now, here's the new baby in the family. This is for low acid food. This is your vegetables, all of your vegetables, your meats, anything of low acid. You need a pressure cooker canner. And I know people who do boiling water bath can their vegetables, but you do need to do it like 4 or 5 hours in a boiling water bath. That's a long time. That's how they used to do it. To be absolutely safe and to make sure that you're not getting botulism, you do need a pressure cooker canner. Here in the front, you'll see a gauge, and this gauge needs to be tested every single year because your life could depend on it. And with the low acid foods, botulism is an ever-present danger. And one of the things about the Northwest here, we do have the highest incidence of botulism in the soil in the world. So it's not something to mess around with here. Here you'll notice that this particular canner, there's 2 different kinds. There's kinds that lock with these screw-down little handles here, and ones that need a washer to actually seal. This one does not need a washer. When you open it up, you can see it's sealed. When it seals with the pressure. So you don't ever have to worry about your gasket wearing out. And you utilize this for your low acid foods. This one will take 7 quarts, or it will take, I think, 14 pints in 2 stacks, so you can stack them 2 high. And that will, you bring it up to pressure, you cook it for the specific amount of time that you need to for the particular kind of vegetable. And you have a safe product that you don't have to worry about botulism in your product when you take it out. If you do have a jar that looks kind of funny when you bring it out, there's 2 things you can do with that. If you're even the slightest afraid that there might be something wrong with it or you didn't quite do it right, botulism, when it's present in a jar, can be odorless, tasteless, has no color. So, you can get botulism and have no evidence of botulism in the jar. So again, if you're at all afraid, you can boil it in an open kettle for 15 minutes, and that will take care of botulism. This is the Bible for canning, the Ball Blue Book. And if we can bring up the CG, there's a website. Ball now has a website. And this is really your be-all and end-all of canning information. Go to this website. If you have any questions about canning anything at any time, any level, anywhere in the world, this site will definitely answer it for you. They're an excellent group of people. There used to be 2 canning companies. There used to be Ball and Kerr, which actually started out here in Portland. The Kerr family actually had a competing business. They merged, I think, about 8 or 9 years ago, and now they're still manufacturing them as Kerr and Ball, but they're actually the same product. The difference used to be Kerr had rubber seals on the inside, Ball had the plastic seals. Now all of the seals are plastic. So there's other different ways of canning food and preparing food, and we're going to be talking a little bit about those later. But now we're going to take a short break, and we're going to have an interesting roll-in about schools, and this one is called Flunk. So sit back and enjoy a short video called Flunked.
Hi, I'm Joe Mantegna. I think this film offers a fairly comprehensive guideline to helping fix some of the problems we have in public education.
And my number one priority for the next 4 years is to ensure that all Americans have the best education in the world.
This is the knowledge century. Unfortunately, we have a lot of kids that are entering that century without any knowledge.
If you can find a way to properly educate the masses, that is the key to fixing just about every problem we have.
But really what's past this debate on this issue is that we've gone from the best to the worst.
Without standards and competition, there can be no champions, no records broken, no excellence in education or any other walk of life.
The United States is at or near the bottom in both mathematics and science.
The world isn't going to adjust to your child. Your child's going to have to adjust to the world.
And parents don't know. They trust the state. They trust the Department of Education.
They think their public school in their neighborhood is great.
But there's an unwillingness on the part of the general public to really take an active part in assuring that they're getting a quality education.
Shouldn't we make it possible for all families to have access to that kind of alternative?
If we don't change, we won't be able to compete. It's the bottom line.
Our test scores last year were the 7th highest of any public high school in Los Angeles.
It is the highest achieving, lowest cost secondary school in this district and perhaps in the state.
There are ways to engage kids in different types of things that this school does, but you just do it with something else.
What do I think is the most one single factor that could change, life as we know it? It would be education.
My 10th graders, 100% of them passed the exam. I don't know any other school in the whole state. 100% of these kids in our 10th grade class, English is their second language.
Obviously, there's millions of ways to educate oneself.
Hi, welcome back. We're having a show all about good things, some food, some canning, and some new stuff that I found out about that's really kind of interesting, especially as we go into winter. And we're going to be talking about some of the things that can help you as far as fighting off some of this stuff that's coming down the track, the flu, colds, just that general winter stuff that happens every single year, and keeping your immune system building up. Now, one of the things that I'd like to talk about first is sprouting. This is a book that I recently got, and sprouts are the way you get a lot of vitamins in the wintertime when there's not a lot of fresh produce available. And this is the complete guide to sprouting, and believe me, it certainly is the complete guide. There's a lot of interesting materials as far as how to sprout, when to sprout, what to sprout, and there's some interesting stuff in here about what to do with the sprouts. Because one of the things that really bothered me is, okay, alfalfa sprouts are really cool. You can throw them in a salad, kind of innocuous. You don't really notice them when you're using them. You throw them on a sandwich, it's like sort of like fuzzy lettuce. But some of the sprouts, some of the bigger sprouts, like the garbanzo beans and the lentils and stuff like that, those things are big. And I mean, you throw those in a salad and you get a kind of a big, chewy, munchy thing of raw whatever it is. So I wasn't too pleased about trying to use it that way. But this book and other books like this have some really interesting ideas about how you can utilize those kinds of sprouts. And one of the things I did recently was you just grind them all up and you throw them in an omelet. And I actually cut up some beets that I had pickled. So it was kind of an interesting omelet. And it didn't taste bad. It tasted good, and you're getting a lot of nutrition and a lot of important minerals and vitamins that you're not going to be able to get in the wintertime from a lot of fresh produce. Everything's going to be stored, and everything's going to be cold storage. So it's not going to be really, really fresh. But sprouting is really interesting because you can get all kinds of different sprouts. You can get radish seed sprouts. You can get wheat sprouts. Any seed that is from a plant, you can actually sprout it. So all the different grains, those are different kinds of taste, different kinds of qualities. They even have sprouted bread. So you can sprout the seeds, then grind them up and stick them in a bread. Or you can stick them in pancakes or muffins. So there's lots of ways you can use sprouts in the wintertime. Now, another thing that I've run across is coconut. Coconut has been given a bad rap over the years. And to be honest with you, coconut is one of the best things you could possibly utilize. Both the flour, which is really kind of an unusual flour, and the oil. Coconut oil is one of the highest burning oils, so you're not going to burn it in the pan as easily when you're actually frying foods or cooking at a higher temperature. So get into thinking about utilizing coconut oil. It also has some incredible things that your body needs. I'm not one of those people who, literally memorizes all the good stuff that you need and you can find in this stuff, but check out coconut. And coconut flour is really kind of an interesting flour because it's not really like a raw flour like wheat or spelt or rye or oats, any of those kinds of grain flours. It's actually just a really neat flour that you can eat. You can actually take a tablespoon of it. So like in your hot cereal in the morning, you can sprinkle on a tablespoon of coconut flour. And it gives it a really nice nutty taste, and you're getting a lot of nutrients and a lot of benefit from utilizing something that is, it's a fat, but your body treats it quite differently. And it can actually help you lose weight as opposed to putting weight on. So get into thinking about utilizing coconut and coconut flour. There's coconut butter, coconut flour, coconut oil. And we sort of more or less changed over for using that on a daily basis for cooking and for a lot of recipes. And it's great on popcorn. Sprinkle some of that on top of your popcorn. I like butter. I think there's nothing wrong with butter, but it also gives it a really nice taste. So a little bit of coconut oil and on your popcorn and some nutritional yeast, a little cayenne. Yes, it's good. Now, the next thing I'd like to talk about is a way of preserving food that's not canning and not freezing. Now, what on earth is that going to be? Well, this is called crowding or lactofermentation. Now, if you think about it, canning is about 150 years old. Before 150 years ago, okay, how did they take care of preserving food? Well, you had your root cellar. You had prayer. You could leave it in the ground like potatoes or carrots sometimes, or you could utilize something called lactofermentation, also known as crowding. This has been used by cultures throughout the world since time immemorial for a way to actually preserve food and at the same time add value to it. So learn a little bit about this because in the future this is going to be a very important way of preserving food. And any kind of vegetable can be crowded. So it's not, only certain vegetables. You can stick anything into a jar and lacto-ferment it. I've done garlic, lotus root, any kind of vegetable you can think of, carrots, beets, anything that you can possibly think of as a vegetable, you can stick in a jar and crowd. And learning about how to do this is probably one of the most important things that you can, along with sprouting, for your own health. So one of the things I'd like to tell you about real quickly is this is called beet kvass. You have beets, and you have water, and you have salt. And if we can bring up the recipe, if you've got a pencil handy or a pen, take down this recipe. This is one of the best winter tonics you can possibly come up with, and it's easy as pie to make. It's basically 3 to 4 beets. You cut them up in quarters, shove them in a jar, 1 tablespoon of salt for every 2 quarts of water, and then you use a 1/4 cup of whey. And whey, the way you make whey is you take a quart of yogurt, stick it in a jelly bag, let it drain overnight, and that's whey. That's your starter. So you stick it in a jar, put the cap on, and in 3 to 5 days you have this wonderful tonic called beet kvass. So one last thing that I'd like to talk about is this book. This is my favorite book at the moment. This one's called Nurturing Traditions. This is a fabulous collection of a way of eating. This is utilizing the traditional methodologies of indigenous people around the world. So it's a combination of raw, vegetarian, and cooked, meat, non-meat. It's a combination of everything. So this book is really the all-around book of food, how to preserve food, how to get the best nutrition out of your food, and also some interesting and clever ways of combining foods. And in the book, which I really like, let me just open this up and I'll give you a little preview, is on the sides of each page you get the histories. You get the history of the food, the way it was used, why it was used that way, where some of the recipes came from, why they were done that way. So this is not just and I'm one of those people, hey, I hate cooking. So if I find this cookbook interesting, you might find it interesting too. So that's a clever little book called Nourishing Traditions. And now we're going to be going to the major feature, our major guest of the program. We're going to have a short, it's a 22-minute video, and we're going to be breaking it up into two sections. And the first section is a little bit of information about this climate debate. And this video is called Climate Change. So this is an interesting short video that will give you some information you may not have heard anywhere else, because as far as I'm concerned, there is no debate because we're only hearing one side of the issue. So sit back and relax and enjoy Climate Change.
June was the hottest month in 3 years, and while many enjoy soaking up
the West have been warning issued for Bermuda, and we're going to start feeling the effects along the coastal section from Florida.
Global warming is already
so flash flooding and mudslides going to be.
Climate crisis and the economic crisis are intertwined.
Thousands of cities are sending a message together that climate change is the issue of our generation.
Between 8:30 and 9:30 at night, turn your lights off. You'll be joining me and a billion others against climate change.
I'll be saving the planet. What will you be doing?
That the legacy of this era that we're living in now is going to be how we responded to this revelation that we're altering the natural systems of our planet.
So it's yet another reason why we have to pay attention to stopping this crisis before it really gets out of control.
Our stories, your stories, must echo every day in the halls of this Congress.
This is at best a gesture.
This is the religious aspect of climate change, which is you engage in certain ritualistic behaviors to make yourself feel good. One of them is the Earth Hour.
Well, these are very, self-conscious efforts for people to feel good about themselves.
Because they don't want you to know the real sacrifices that they want you to make. They want you to think that it's as easy as turning off your lights for just 1 hour.
I believe this legislation has the moral significance equivalent to that of the civil rights legislation of the 1960s.
They say it's the most important challenge of our generation. They say the very earth hangs in the balance, and they want us to take action. We're told to replace our light bulbs, to promote electric cars, to make fuel from corn and soybeans, and to change our lifestyles. But will these actions work?
When I was a kid, we were afraid to go out of our homes for fear of being burned by acid rain. Then it was the hole in the ozone layer. And now I'm told that I can't drive my vehicle because it's killing polar bears.
They tell us that the polar bear population is terribly threatened, that polar bears are dying already as a result of climate change.
Polar bears are pretty tough, and frankly, polar bears are some of the best swimmers on the planet.
And in fact, the polar bear population has never been healthier. It's double what it was in the 1950s.
And so when you see pictures of polar bears swimming around, it's because they want to be swimming around. But people don't know that. They use the fact that polar bears are attractive and are charismatic to scare people into doing things.
There's a real desire to come up with good, scary stories, and also, I think, some ideological sympathy with the environmental activist movement.
Well, they care more about lemurs. They care more about gnats.